Hey YouTube, Alan here. Last week we did a walk around of the Jeep showing essentially what the Jeep looks like as of today, February 2019. And in this video today, I want to go over a couple of considerations, somewhat high level, that you need to look into before you start modifying your vehicle. So let's get started. And basically it is about what should you consider before you modify a vehicle. What is the primary purpose or the primary use for that vehicle going to be? Because a lot of people that when I originally started working on my Jeep, a lot of people were telling me, you need this, you need that, you need to modify this, you need to lift, you need bigger tires, at least 35 inch, you need better shocks, you need front and rear bumpers, you need, all kinds of things. And one of my questions used to be, okay, why? What's the reason behind needing those? But to be honest, all the people that were telling me to make these mods to my Jeep couldn't really tell me what the purpose behind them was, other than, well, they look cool. And while that may be true, you have to realize when you make a modification like that to your vehicle, and that vehicle is supposed to be like a daily driver, or at least a somewhat daily driver, anything you change on the vehicle makes that vehicle less practical as a daily driver, usually. So with that, what I started looking at was, what do you need to consider before starting on the adventure of creating a purpose-built vehicle to do things like car camping or off-roading, also sometimes called backcountry adventure, or overlanding. And we'll go into all these, what all these mean. And finally, expeditions. What is the difference between car camping, off-roading, overlanding, and expeditions? So those differences are important to consider before we start making changes to the vehicle. So the first thing I want to look at is, what is an expedition vehicle or a purpose-built vehicle? Well, a four-wheel drive vehicle or an adventure motorcycle, so it doesn't have to be a four-wheel type vehicle. It can also be a two-wheel vehicle. So a four-wheel drive vehicle that is prepared for self-reliant, that's an important piece, self-reliant travel over long distances. So it's not, to go by yourself to the grocery store. It's really self-reliant travel over long distances through unpredictable weather and or over variable terrain. So what that means is it needs to be a vehicle that can handle that type of task, or that type of a purpose, or that type of a use case. And those vehicles, before you start modifying those vehicles, you need to first decide, what kind of vehicle do I want? What kind of vehicle do I need? So there's really four big buckets that you can put uses for vehicles into. The first one being car camping. So car camping is basically traveling with your vehicle or in your vehicle to an established campground. And the general joke kind of is that if there's a picnic table and it's developed, then it's car camping, or it's probably car camping. So for car camping, usually you can get to such an established or developed campground via a dirt road, well established, a gravel road, or even a paved road. So the need for a high clearance four-wheel drive vehicle is probably not there if all you want to do is car camping, whether by yourself or with your family. So it just needs to be a vehicle that's large enough to accommodate all the stuff that you want to take when you're camping. The second category of vehicles or of things that you need to look at is off-roading or backcountry adventures. And off-roading or backcountry adventure is really a one-day or multi-day off-highway. So it's this. Now you're talking about something that is not on established roads, but on 4x4 trails, or in general, maybe less established dirt roads, shelf roads, rock, that kind of thing. In a vehicle that is purpose built for this. This type of vehicle use requires usually more extensive modifications, especially if what you want to do is a very specific rough terrain type adventure. For example, a lot of people modify their Jeeps or modify their Toyota Land Cruisers or their whatever vehicle they have. They may modify it by adding bigger tires, by lifting the vehicle up to do rock crawling. And rock crawling is a very specific type of use of an off-road vehicle or of an expedition vehicle that, people can get so crazy into this that they will modify the vehicle to the point where it's not even street legal anymore. So they actually have to trailer their off-road vehicle to the spot or to the area that they want to do this particular sport at with some other vehicle. So that's something that you need to keep in mind. If that's what you want to do, then you probably are looking at pretty extensive modifications. Another use is what is nowadays called overlanding. And overlanding is basically something where you do an adventure, or it's adventure travel. So vehicle supported, self-reliant. Again, that's important. Self-reliant, adventure travel, typically exploring remote locations and or interacting with other cultures. Usually overlanding, the difference between overlanding and some of the other purposes is that overlanding, the journey is part of the adventure. So you're not actually doing something where the vehicle is a means to get you to something that you want to explore. The vehicle is part, and the journey is part of the adventure as you're going. And that brings us to the last big bucket or big category that I'm looking at, and that is expeditions. Okay, what is an expedition? That's really what I do. But an expedition is basically an organized, vehicle-dependent journey with a defined purpose. For example, to make photographs. So when I take the Jeep, I don't take the Jeep off-roading for the journey. I usually take the Jeep off-roading to get to spots that are off the beaten path, that I can get photos at, that not 100 other people have the exact same photo already. So that's why, to me, or my use, when I started thinking about this in more detail and started specifically differentiating between, am I looking at a vehicle that is more overland capable or a vehicle that's more expedition capable? And I decided for myself that the vehicle I wanted was more of an expedition type vehicle, which is why I settled on the two-door Jeep Wrangler Rubicon instead of a Toyota 4Runner or a Nissan Patrol or some of the bigger vehicles. Because while they are nice, because they have typically a higher payload, they are also heavier, they are larger, they have bigger wheelbases, sometimes they are wider, which makes it more difficult to get to the tougher spots to get to. And that's what I like about the Jeep. So the next thing you have to decide then, once you have decided on a purpose, is you have to look at what, you have a vehicle, what are the modifications that make sense for the type of purpose that I want to use the vehicle for. And for me, as I said, that was using the Jeep to get to spots that I can then photograph, and I don't have to worry about getting there and getting back out. I can just camp there if I need to, overnight there if I need to, or if it's a long trek, I can actually, overnight and then go on the next day before I get to the spot to photograph. So to me, from my use perspective, the key was that I can have a vehicle that is reliable and that has enough storage capability, is not too heavy, because it also is acting as my daily driver when I'm not running around photographing. So with all that in mind, I decided that there was three key modifications that I was going to make.